Always beautiful. So I just want to start off by saying that often people send me little jokes and funny stories via email and or Facebook, and I'm always happy to receive them because it just gives me more material for Sunday, right? So Reggie, I'd like to thank you for this one. Short and sweet, not too short, but it's very cute. A taxi driver taps the driver on the shoulder to ask him, a taxi passenger, excuse me, tapped the, okay, I gotta start over. Well, I'll get it right this time, I bet. A taxi passenger taps the driver on the shoulder to ask him a question. The driver screams, loses control of the car, nearly hits a bus, goes up on the footpath, and stops centimeters from a shop window. For a second, everything goes quiet in the cab. Then the driver says, "Look, mate, don't ever do that again. You scared the daylights out of me." The passenger apologized and said, "I didn't realize that a little tap on the shoulder would scare you so much." The driver replied, "Sorry, it's really not your fault. I've been driving a funeral van for the last 25 years. Thanks, oh, goodness. That would scare you. But probably not some of this crew. They just had a conversation. But anyway, I'd like to, first of all, the topic today is how to live in this world. It seems to be something we're all trying to figure out on a daily basis. And, you know, yesterday we had such a wonderful ministers' conference. You know, it was beautiful to participate in the renewal of our ministerial vows, which is always a beautiful thing to do. All the ministers got to experience that. We got to watch the ordination of Reverend Brian's 3 new men, which is a great asset to our ministry. And they're great, awesome men. And Donna Menz gave a great presentation on the community resilience model, which is really something I'm going to go into it in just a little bit. And I offered a little bit of a presentation on memorials and weddings. And at least we know where to get a cab driver, right? For the but anyway, it was great because, you know, although I had a little questionnaire and some helpful tidbits for the group, again, as always, there were great masters amongst us who had lots to share, which is always, you know, if we're looking how to live in the world, I think we need to understand that we get by with a little help from our friends. You know, it's not about the me anymore, it's about the we. And the sooner we get that, I think the more easily we'll be able to walk this path on this planet. Well, anyway, I'd like to, this is something that I've been thinking about, and it's basically in a society that profits from your self-doubt, liking yourself is a rebellious act. I would also like to add that this same society profits on putting us against each other. And, you know, the world, you know, to keep this illusion and the fear alive in the world, it's to pit us against each other. And I think we're seeing the epitome of that right now on these ridiculous political dramas that we're watching every day. If you turn on the news or the radio, that's all we hear about. It's this. And, you know, it's amazing. I've never seen, I don't think I remember ever seeing such anxiety and angst and separation. You know, it's okay to disagree, you know, where's the we can agree to disagree and still be friends. It was even said, I've heard it a number of times, that although in politics, you know, of the past, that although they would be fighting on the floor, they would go have a drink afterwards and a bite to eat, and they could have a civil conversation and be friends. And so this is not about everybody just saying that, you know, there has to be one way to be in the world or live in the world, but I think to live in this world to the utmost degree, to our highest degree of love, is somehow to respect each other and understand each other and be willing to disagree and to agree that we can disagree, and it doesn't mean I don't have to like you anymore. And so we go out and have that cup of coffee after the disagreement. Well, it even goes on, and I've shared this often, but I think it bears repeating every time I say it because it is such a powerful statement. And our main function, our only function, according to A Course in Miracles on this planet, in this experience, is forgiveness. And forgiveness means that I am willing to take full responsibility for who I've made everyone out to be. That you are just playing your perfect role in my life, showing up to tick me off or love me or whatever, so I can learn to know who I am at a deeper level, to learn to forgive at a deeper level. So forgiveness is the ultimate goal, to see the world forgiven, to see the world in its holiness and perfection rather than all the problems and separation and battles that we seem to make up in this story. Well, Marianne Williamson says, she was talking, this was 20 some odd years ago when I first heard her say this, and she talked about forgiveness, and she said, just because I forgive you doesn't mean we have to have lunch, okay? And I love that because, it's like, okay, I can forgive this person, but, I really don't want to have a cup of coffee or lunch with them. I just can't be in the same room with them. And sometimes that's a part of the process of forgiveness. But years later, I was so touched when she said she left one word out, and Spirit said, Marianne, you forgot a word in that I told you, and it was just because I forgive you doesn't mean we have to have lunch yet. So that means that we're maybe not wanting to go to lunch with that person yet, okay? But when we've truly forgiven a situation, which ultimately all forgiveness is self-forgiveness, all, period, end of statement there. So when I forgive myself for my false story about who I think someone else is, then there ultimately is nothing to forgive. And I remember John Mundy, I've shared this before too, but I think it's a great analogy, talking about forgiveness, and he says, if we were really honest, the way we would just think about this, can you imagine yourself going through your day-to-day experience with a big megaphone on your head, and every thought you think is being projected out onto the world? It's like, that's an ugly shirt, you're fat, you're ugly, whatever, well, Donald Trump does it without the microphone. And I really am not making this about Donald Trump negatively. I'll think of something about Hillary to say negative so you all can, but anyway. But, it's the point is he said, that's something to think about. What are we blaring out in our mind? Because it is, although we're not verbalizing it, it's still being received the same way. Because if it's in our mind, it's in the field, period. So we really have to take responsibility for thought and all that chatter that is being projected onto the world. Well, then he's explaining, John Mundy, about forgiveness, and he goes on to follow that statement by talking about forgiveness and saying, well, how often have we said, well, I'll bury the hatchet, I'll forgive that person. And, we think, giving ourselves a pat on the back. And he says, think about this, though. Until you forget where you buried the hatchet, you haven't forgiven the person. And I was like, okay, well, I still haven't forgotten a few of those hatchets. But I've forgotten more than I have in the past, so I'm grateful for that. But two things that you got to think about. I'm not forgiving yet, and that's okay, nothing to reinforce guilt over. And until you forgot where that hatchet's buried, maybe we've got a little more work to do, and that's okay too. So anyway, Oscar Wilde says, we are each our own devil, and we make this world our own hell. And so again, heaven and hell are not external conditions, but rather states of mind. So do I choose to see the world as heaven, or do I choose to make it my own hell? And I do that by my thoughts about it. Heaven is here now. There is no other place. It is a state of mind and a state of being. So we have that choice every moment. So anyway, but speaking of hell and being in a mind of hell, a lot of people do suffer. There's, and something I hear often, lately, it seems to be coming up, PTSD seems to be a issue that a lot of people are dealing with. And I can't relate to that on a personal level, I just can't. But I know there has to be something there that is very painful and real, because the people I know who have it are putting forth an awful lot of effort to overcome it, and often not getting the results that they want. And so I know that those people are suffering, and it could be from being in a war, it could be from child abuse, it could be from a number of things. Just recently we had talked about a friend of ours who had cancer, and in the support group that he's gone to, they diagnosed him with PTSD because of the shock and the trauma on his body and all of the emotions that go with, stage 4 cancer. Even though this person's cancer-free at the time, there's still that underlying, shock of that situation. So, there are buried emotions that can be triggered, just triggered by someone's look at you, or something we think about, or a smell, or anything, a song can trigger that. Well, yesterday Donna did a beautiful presentation. It was a mini presentation of what they call community resilience model. And it's something that I hope to have here for an all-day seminar, because I think it really offers everybody and anybody an opportunity to participate in that process of helping people, maybe when they're caught up in that pain and suffering of the moment, to be able to shift out of it a little bit, at least for that moment, and get them in that state of what I would call pause, and sort of turning the corner down another street, one of peace than conflict. So she talked about this there's a lot of people in PTSD and trauma on the planet today for lots of reasons. So as a result of that, she gave a little presentation. It was Reverend Donna and Reverend Jen. Yeah, thank you, Reverend Jen. And they did a beautiful little dialogue here, and the way to. And Jen was truly experiencing it, and her PTSD, and I don't think I'm talking out of school here, not PTSD, but her trigger was that she was told when she was a child that being late was basically not okay, and if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late or something like that, you're still 10 minutes late. So she's always had that's triggered her off. So, it's like when she goes into panic if she thinks she's gonna be late, okay? So the process was actually very valuable. Donna went through this process, and it brought her back to because it was trapped in her body. That feeling of being late was just causing her angst and anxiety. And through the dialogue, it took Jen to a more peaceful, happy, joyful time in her life, a memory, which replaced that anxiety with a peaceful thought and feeling. So it's not the end all be all by any means, and I know that there's often, so many layers and so many tools that we can use. But I do believe that, once we recognize that we're in that fight or flight, we're in that scary place, whatever's happening out here, we do have the tools to shift out of that, at least for the moment. And that's, as we talk about, take that breath, pause. And as the Course in Miracles says, is ask the Holy Spirit for help. Ask to be led down a path of peace than one of fear. And sure enough, the exact thing we need will show up. And for some, it's magical and instant, it's grace. And for others, it's a peeling away of the layers. But either way, we are here to heal and to live in this world peacefully, joyfully, and happily, not in conflict and blame. And there is a way out. They called this practice actually resourcing. So you're actually resourcing back to a memory that will replace that fear in your body to one of peace and comfort. Well, so anyway, in the Course in Miracles, there's a question, well, what is the real world, And it says the real world is a symbol, like the rest of what perception offers. Yet it stands for what is opposite to what you made. Your world is seen through the eyes of fear and brings witness of terror to your mind. The real world cannot be perceived except through the eyes of forgiveness, so they see a world where terror is impossible and witness to fear cannot be found. So then again, the eyes of forgiveness, when we're really in that state of self-responsibility, self-love, self-acceptance, being willing to see the world through the eyes of the Holy Spirit or love, it doesn't matter what symbol or name you give it, but shift that perception, then the miracle of peace will be ours for the asking, and it never fails. And the thing is, it's a training, it's a vigilance, it's a dedication like anything else. Do I desire the peace of God, or do I want to rationalize and say, well, this, I'm willing to give all this up, but I still want to hold on to this a little bit, or I'm justified to hold on to this anger or this resentment. It's okay. You can hold on to it as long as you want. As the Course says, delay is meaningless in eternity, but tragic in time. Meaning that in the realm of eternity, all is forgiven, it's all good, and it's fine and dandy. But tragic in time means, what the heck are you holding on to it for? I mean, is it really serving you? Do you feel good? I do know that we are here to be happy and joyous. And I know that life is meant to be a journey of joy. And it's up to us whether or not we choose to go down that path or not. It's not an easy path, but it is always a choice and a decision. So we talk about, our world is at a tipping point, and, we're either gonna where's the dominant energy going? One thing that we can say about the presidential election, at the end of the day, whoever wins means that's where the collective consciousness is most aligned to. That's the bottom line. My consciousness is aligned to creating a new world, a world where peace and love do prevail, where the needs of all are equally important, where we really see each other in their divinity rather than their limitations, where everyone is fed, and loved and heard and nurtured. And so, as C.S. Lewis says, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. And I feel like that's what, I'm made for anyway, because I'm not, being that satisfied by this world. And when I say that, I love being here. But there's nothing out here anymore that really does it for me. I used to want to travel. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. I like to travel, but it's not so much a need for me, but just like, oh, that'd be fun to do. And if I do it, great. And if I don't, or I used to want stuff, or I wanted, this to be this way or that to be that way. And I find now what is meaningful for me is connections. To be in here on Sunday and feel the love and the connection with each other. Yesterday, the energy, everybody was saying, man, you just get hit with the love when you walk in here. That's the world that I choose to create and see. That's the new world. And it makes it a lot easier to be amidst, we don't have to engage in the conflict of the world. We can just step out of that and make up our new one, truly. Buckminster Fuller said the same thing, if, it's not about fixing the old paradigm or the old model, but creating a new one. And that's what we're doing. We're creating a new model if we choose to. And I have no idea what that model looks like. The only thing I know is that the model in the world I choose to be in is one where it's harmonious and peaceful and loving. Well, Yogananda, who we've had a blast in the group on Thursday nights, which I really invite anyone to join. It's a wonderful group. We're studying from a book, The Second Coming of Christ, Awakening the Christ Consciousness in You. It's great material. And I'm just really drawn to Yogananda, and I'm not an expert on him at all, but I'm learning to be. And you see, again, I put myself out there. I'm like, although I'm co-facilitating the group, I really don't know a whole lot about this man, but I have a desire to learn. I'm willing to hold space, and I'm willing to be taught by everyone else in the group. And that to me is what it's about. I don't have to have that role of knowing everything. I just want to sit and listen and learn from everyone else. Isn't that what it's about? Mm-hmm. But one thing he says is, be afraid of nothing, hating none, giving love to all, feeling the love of God, seeing his presence in everyone, and having but one desire, for his constant presence in the temple of your consciousness. That is the way to live in the world. And that to me is the way, to have his constant presence in the temple of our consciousness. That's the way to live in the world. He goes on to say, never accept the limitations of your environment. Remain inwardly ensconced in the castle of God's presence. There is no other haven of safety. In fearlessness, affirm, I am castled in God's presence. No harm can reach me, for in every situation, physical, mental, financial, spiritual, I am protected in the fortress of God's presence. Doesn't that just feel good? It sort of just melts it all away. Like, okay, don't sweat the small stuff. But, there's, as you know, I'm a seeker of finding that universal truth, that common thread that flows through everything, because I believe there is a common thread that flows through all philosophies, spiritualities, and truths and ideas. And I'll close with this comment because I've probably heard it before, but it's so powerful and so true. And if you didn't hear anything I said today, this is one to take in your heart. An old Cherokee told his grandson, my son, there is a battle between two wolves inside of us all. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. The other is good. That's joy, peace, love, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth. The boy thought about it and said, Grandfather, which wolf wins?
Whichever one you feed.
Whichever one you feed. And so it is. Namaste.